Salam everyone, it's me, Mayla. I'm gonna talk about someone that's important. Her name is Bisan. Do you know Bisan? Bisan is so beautiful. She is in Gaza right now, risking her life to show us what's going on there. Bisan is a filmmaker. Her work is so beautiful. Here are something about Bisan. She has curly hair like me. I have curly hair. She loves to travel. She been to Amman. She been to Paris and even Egypt. She even tried boxing. Do. Bisan, I want you to know to appreciate everything you do. Inshallah, you stay safe. And inshallah, you can do this. I want you to know you're my hero. And I love you. Keep talking about Palestine. Bye.
Imagine if people with disabilities or other people with special needs are now on the shelters that are not designed to be shelters, with no access to food, to water, to bathrooms, and to other needs. How could be their situations? I'm now at the Shifa Hospital, a shelter for many people. Today, I'm gonna take you to my friend. She is Shireen. She had Down syndrome, and her mother is suffering. She's in need for many things. Shireen, child. This is not the problem. Actually, it happened several times in this world. But the problem is that the amputation was performed without anesthesia. And the doctor was willing to rescue his child, but the child did not survive the pain. Can you imagine the pain that he caused for all of us, and for his father, and for you guys also? I'm sure that this is not okay to you. But also, can you imagine how are we suffering on front of the whole world? Everyone is knowing this because we are all documenting this. We are all documenting what's happening. This child and the father or others, you already know the stories, but there's no ceasefire, there's no any aid, there's no any at least mercy on the hospitals or schools.
This doctor right here had to amputate his own child without anesthesia, and the child passed away because of the pain. And I can only imagine what this man is going through. The video is so heart-wrenching and just so heartbreaking to see. And imagine, this is thousands of stories of parents watching their children being unalive in front of them. Some of them watching them like literally blow up. Some of them are seeing them, dragged into the hospital on stretchers, and they have to recognize oh, this is my child that is just being unalived. And it's honestly, I don't know how the people of Gaza are holding up. This is honestly faith and just God putting so much, strength in their hearts to deal with this, because he could lose his mind. Imagine this is so heartbreaking. I don't even know what is going on anymore. And the number keeps going up of all the unalive people in Gaza since October 7. Now it's more than 13,000 people. It's more than 13,000 people, and most of those people are children. Children are the ones that are mostly being unalived in Gaza, and the world still says that Israel has the right to defend themselves. From what? From what? Children, water, food, rain. They're taking rain from the Palestinians also. Is Hamas inside of the rain? I can't. Since Saudi Arabia blocked the Houthi rebels from fighting on air with the Israeli military, now they hijack their ships, as they should. It says Yemen's Houthi rebels hijack an Israeli-linked ship in the Red Sea and take 25 crew members hostage, as they should. As they should. Any means necessary for the liberation and the freedom of the Palestinian people. As they should. No, the Houthi rebels, we have to give it up to them. They're the only Muslim country actually doing something action-wise, not having a press conference telling us all kinds of nonsense and not doing anything about it, right? They're taking action, and we love them, and they have always been the only group that fights for justice whenever something like this happens. Saudi, you should be ashamed of yourself. One of the members says the detention of the Israeli ship is a particular step that proves the seriousness of the Yemeni armed forces in waging the sea battle, regardless of its costs. This is the beginning. As they should. And if there's more ships, Israeli ships coming by, they should hijack it as well. Why? Because we need to block all of their resources. Israel is backed by the US, Britain, France. They have everything. They have everything, and that's why they're literally getting away with a genocide. And we have to do whatever we can to block their resources, to do whatever we can to help the Palestinian people. Yemeni Houthis, we give it up to you. You're the only one taking action to stop Israel. And props to you guys. Every other Muslim nation, you guys, you should be ashamed of yourselves.
يا جماعة والله ما احنا عارفين وين القصف. والله ما احنا عارفين وين القصف. هنا تعال. تاني غادر خلاص. تعال يا حنان تعال. يا الله. يا الله. يا الله. وين ولادي؟ يا الله. الضربة في دار ابو نصر. هي هذه صح؟ هي الدار. هي الدار.
الله يرحمهم. برضو بابا استشهد، ماما استشهدت، اخويا وليد استشهد. ايش اللي هذا اهو اللي ضللنا؟ ستات التنتين استشهدوا، وسيدي خالد وسيدي ابو انس وعمامه وخالاته واخواله ومرت خاله واختها. أنا اسمه دارين البياع. صار معنا هذا قصف، وهدموا علينا الدار، قصفوها علينا وإحنا جواها. كل اللي بالدار استشهدوا، فيش إلا إحنا وأخويا اللي ضايلين، وأخويا كنان يعني حبيبي سندي وظهري هذا، يعني فيش إلا هو إن شاء الله هو اللي هيدير بالي علي. الاحتلال الصهيوني مش راضين يحلوا عنا خالص، هدمونا وقصفوا البيوت هذا على الناس، مش أدوا الناس تحذير إنهم يطلعوا من نقصف الدار، لا بيقصفوهم على الناس ولا بهمهم، رايحين جايين يقصفوا، مش راضين يحلوا عنا شوية ثانية. رسالتي للناس إنهم إذا بحبوا دارين من عالم دارين يكتبوا لي رسالة أو أي شيء. وحبيبي خلي سلامة، أنت سندي وظهري خلي السلامة، أنا بنسكش خالص يا خلي سلامة. وخلي سلامة هو ساكن بتركيا، وقال لنا إن شاء الله إذا خلصت الحرب على خير بدي أجي عندكم، عشان هو قال لي بدي أدير بالي عليك. إيش اللي خلى الواحد ضايع؟ أنا مستشهدة الله يرحمهم.
تشوف دواية ولا عمر ظل فينا هيك ولا في الحياة. طيارة اجت نزلت على الدار علينا F-35 وغاصت علينا هيك بطلت اقدر امشي ولا اتحرك ولا شيء وين جينا زي اللي حوالي 10 ايام لا بتحرك ولا شيء. واحد مسكني من هنا وواحد مسكني من هنا. في العالم كله ما صار فينا هيك. العالم كله ما صار فينا هيك. بدنا نعيش كويس. بدنا ناكل طعمة كويسة. ما فيش يعني نجيب دارنا ونجي هنا في الشارع نسمع. والله حرام أكبر حرام هذا. والله حرام. والله مش عارف ايش اقول.
They are covering the space with mattresses and blankets, so the dogs at night does not come and feed on the bodies of those people.
Witnessing a killing of civilians that is unparalleled and unprecedented in any conflict since I am Secretary General. I've been very clear in denouncing the violations of international humanitarian law and the violations of protection of civilians. I have not a mandate to classify the acts. There are entities that have that mandate. But I think that more important than a discussion on names is the facts. And let's see the facts. As you know, we report every year on children killed in armed conflicts by different actors. I have already presented 7 reports. In the 7 reports, the highest number of children killed in 1 year by one actor was by the Taliban in 2017-2018. The second by the Syrian government and its allies, again before 2020, and again it was around 700. We have had Russia last year, 350. We had Saudi Arabia, if you remember the uproar in relation to Yemen. In 1 year, the maximum 300. Now, without entering into discussing the accuracy of the numbers that were published by the facto authorities in Gaza, what is clear is that we have had in a few weeks thousands of children killed. So this is what matters.
Olives, watermelons and the keffiyeh are all symbols of Palestine and the Palestinian resistance. But did you know that the poppy is also a symbol of resistance and indigenous Palestinian heritage? The poppy is the national flower of Palestine and is symbolic for a number of reasons. Firstly, the flower features all 4 colours that make up the Palestinian flag: red, black, white and green. The rich red colour also represents the blood shed by those who have fought for the Palestinian nation. And in the spring, the flower blankets fields in the region with its bright red colour. The Palestinian American professor Nasser Abu Farha said, "The poppy symbolises the relationship of exchange and reciprocity between the Palestinian's life and the land of Palestine, where the Palestinian's body gives life to the land of Palestine." The poppy has different names in different parts of Palestine. In the north, it's called Hannoun, which is Arabic for passionate, and in the south, Shakik, meaning brother. And that is why you might be coming across the image of the poppy amongst other symbols representing Palestinian resistance.
It is November 21st. I have updates for today. If I miss anything, please comment it. I'm going to start out with breaking news from southern Lebanon. An Al-Mayadeen correspondent as well as photographer were targeted and killed by Israeli terrorist forces in southern Lebanon. An Israeli terrorist attack has also killed an elderly woman and wounded her granddaughter in southern Lebanon today. So 4 people, including 2 journalists, were killed in Israeli attacks in southern Lebanon. And now we're getting a report that an Israeli air raid on a car in southern Lebanon has killed 4 more people near the southern city of Tyre, also known as Sur, which is where most of my family is. I have not spoken to my family in Sur today, but I will be talking with my mom in a little bit and seeing what's going on. The attacks on the Mayadeen correspondent as well as the photographer are targeted attacks. Al-Mayadeen is one of the few that are reporting on what's happening in southern Lebanon, as well as what's happening in Palestine, and doing it in a way that is not censored and in a way that doesn't appease the Israeli government and doesn't make them look good, because it's telling the truth. We've seen that they've already been targeting Al Jazeera journalists and just journalists in general that are exposing the truth of what's happening. It should also be noted, when the two people who work for Al-Mayadeen were killed today in southern Lebanon by Israeli terrorist forces, that there was a third person with them that was also killed, and they were a contributor to the channel. And this all comes after the Israeli government blocked access to Al-Mayadeen's website. And Hezbollah has already been retaliating in regards to these deaths. Al-Shifa hospital has been bombed by Israeli terrorist forces, and parts of it have been destroyed. About 120 people have been evacuated from the Indonesian hospital and the Nasser hospital. Israeli terrorist forces are increasing their aggression towards the Indonesian hospital and are fabricating evidence. Hospitals in northern Gaza are completely out of service. Israeli terrorist forces surround the only kidney dialysis hospital in Gaza for the second day. And it should be noted that the Israeli terrorist forces are still besieging the Al-Shifa hospital, and there are still 700 people inside of the hospital. There are also over 400 injured inside of the Indonesian hospital, 200 medical staff, and over 2,000 taking refuge. Israeli terrorist forces are targeting anybody who moves inside and outside of the Indonesian hospital. Israeli terrorist airstrikes targeted the house of the Deputy Undersecretary of the Health Ministry this morning. There were 56 of his relatives in the house who were displaced from different areas of Gaza. Rescue teams managed to find 17 bodies, while the rest are still under the rubble. Al-Shifa, Al-Ahli, and Indonesian hospitals are asking for help in regards to evacuating. They want to evacuate the hospital, but it is so dangerous to do it while being surrounded by Israeli terrorist forces, as well as moving patients who are in critical condition it's a huge risk, and there needs to be help. Israeli terrorist forces have attacked Nusayrat refugee camp twice today. Israeli terrorist forces hit Al-Awda hospital with an airstrike, resulting in many casualties and injured people. Now, although 58 trucks were allowed through the Rafah crossing into Gaza containing food and medical supplies, it is not enough for the entirety of Gaza and has been limited to southern Gaza, leaving those in northern and central Gaza without the access to the food and medical supplies. At least 8,000 Palestinians are being detained illegally by Israel, and more than 3,000 of those, including dozens of children, have been illegally detained from the occupied West Bank since October 7th. I will continue to make videos throughout the day in regards to updates. Yesterday, my update video was shadow banned. It was banned at first completely. They put it back up, but then they weren't showing it to anybody. So it only reached a few thousand people, which is pretty rare because most of them reach over 30,000. So if you see this update video today, please share it. Please interact with it. Share information. Speak up. Journalists are being targeted. We need to use our voices. Okay? Everything that they put out, we need to amplify. And remember, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free.
Breaking news from Gaza, it's 7:10 a.m. Palestine time, November 22nd. 30 minutes ago, the director of the Indonesian hospital in northern Gaza stated the occupation gave hospital workers 4 hours to evacuate the hospital. Resistance News Network on Telegram reported that this comes a day after a several-hour bombing campaign targeted the hospital, leading to the evacuation of over 500 patients and thousands of displaced Gazans, as well as over 15 martyrs. And 23 minutes ago, they reported that an ambulance transporting wounded Palestinians was targeted by the IOF near the Kamal Adwan hospital in northern Gaza. On video from the Indonesian hospital 10 minutes ago, Dr. Munir El-Barsh, the general director of the Ministry of Health in Gaza, is observed from across the hall, praying, and the report reads, "For 45 days, this doctor has been transmitting the news of the IOF's atrocities to the people of the world. With little sleep and continuous explosions, he delivers the truth to all, describing in detail the conditions of the sick, the wounded, the displaced, the martyrs, now solemnly prays with his hands raised inside the besieged Indonesian hospital in northern Gaza, which is surrounded by IOF tanks, drones, and planes. The hospital was heavily bombed yesterday. The wounded cannot reach the hospital. Hundreds of patients have been evacuated, and the medical staff that remain are targeted by drones if they leave. The IOF moments ago gave the medical staff a few hours to evacuate. Now remember, Dr. Al-Barsh was inside Al-Shifa the entire siege. While there are still 700 people in Al-Shifa, I'm not sure exactly when Dr. Al-Barsh went to Indonesian, but at some point in the past few days he did, and now he is once again experiencing this. 5 hours ago, statement from the Ministry of Health spokesman Ashraf Al-Kitra: the occupation is carrying out retaliatory operations against hospitals in the Gaza Strip. Targeting hospitals in northern Gaza aims to push the population out. The occupation is repeating in the Indonesian hospital what it did to the Al-Shifa medical complex. We fear for the lives of those inside Kamal Adwan, Al-Awda, and Indonesian hospitals. We were able to evacuate 320 wounded and their companions from the Indonesian hospital.
الأسيرة الجريحة إسراء رياض جعابيص. عمري 37 عاما وأم لطفل أسميته معتصم. كنت شابة متعاونة مرحة مقبلة على الحياة. كانت عائلتي تلقبني ببابا نويل لأني كنت أحمل كيسا مليئا بالهدايا وأوزعها على الجميع. لقبت أيضا بالمهرج سوسو، فإضافة إلى عملي ودراستي الجامعية كنت أتطوع لإسعاد الأطفال المرضى في مستشفيات القدس. في 11 من أكتوبر عام 2015 انقلبت حياتي رأسا على عقب. قدت مركبتي يومها نحو القدس باتجاه حاجز الزعيم، وقبل الحاجز بكيلومتر ونصف تعطلت مركبتي وبدأت تحترق جراء تماس كهربائي. نزلت منها هلعة لأطلب المساعدة، ولسوء حظي كان أحد عناصر شرطة الاحتلال قريبا مني، وبدلا من مساعدتي دفعني إلى داخل المركبة المحترقة وأغلق الباب. أتت النيران على نصف جسدي، وأصبت بحروق شديدة في وجهي وظهري، وفوق ذلك اعتقلوني وحكموني بالسجن 11 عاما بتهمة محاولة تنفيذ عملية. على مدار 8 سنوات عانيت من آلام شديدة بدون مساعدة طبية، ورفضت محكمة الاحتلال السماح بإجراء عمليات جراحية لي بحجة أنها تجميلية وغير ضرورية. هل تعلمون؟ أنا أتنفس من فمي لأن أنفي محترق، عظمي مكشوف بسبب آثار البتر في أصابع يدي 8. عندما آكل يتناثر الطعام من فمي بسبب تضرر شفتي السفلى. التقيحات تملأ جسدي، وأضرت النيران بسمعي وبصري. عندما جاء طفلي لزيارتي في السجن أول مرة ارتديت زي نمر كي لا يراني مشوهة جريحة. لم أفقد الأمل في الأسر، وبدأت بتعليم الأسيرات التطريز وإعادة التدوير. نظمت لهن فعاليات جميلة كالتي نظمتها لأطفال القدس، حتى أنني صنعت الكثير من الهدايا لطفلي، منها ساعات ومركبات. أرسلت رسائل كثيرة لعائلتي من داخل الأسر، قلت في أبرزها: أنا موجوعة، احكوا للناس ما ينسوني، أنا بني آدم وبتوجع كتير، فهل وصلتكم رسائلي أم نسيتموني؟
Hello everybody, today is Tuesday, November 21st, 2023 at around 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and here are some of the latest updates coming out of Palestine. We'll begin with some updated figures from the Gaza Health Ministry, but before I do that, I want to note that all of these numbers do not include those who are not buried through the hospital system, those who are under the rubble, or those who are missing at large. As of 12:11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, it was released that 14,128 martyrs have been killed. 5,840 of those martyrs are children, 201 were medical staff, 22 were civil defense rescue team, and 60 journalists have been killed since October 7th. The UNRWA has also reported that the number of displaced people in the Gaza Strip have now exceeded 1.7 million. President Biden has released a statement about the hostage deal in between Hamas and the Israeli government, and he has stated, quote, "We've been working on getting hostages out for weeks. We are now very close, very close. We can bring some of the hostages home very soon, but don't want to get into the details of things," end quote. It's officially been announced that none of the hospitals in the north of the Gaza Strip are functioning any longer, and I'm going to read from a list of things coming out of the hospitals there. There are more than 700 people still besieged at the Al-Shifa hospital. 28 premature babies from Al-Shifa were evacuated to Egypt yesterday. The Indonesian hospital is currently under attack in what's been described as a circle of death. About 500 patients were evacuated from the Indonesian hospital in a, quote, critical situation, end quote, according to Mohammed Zakut, the Director General of all hospitals in Gaza. The Indonesian hospital is currently being attacked by shelling as well as surrounded by Israeli tanks, and at least 12 people were killed by shellings in the hospital yesterday. Occupancy in Gaza hospitals has reached above 190%. Al-Shifa has been bombed recently. At the Indonesian hospital, troops are targeting anybody inside. It was similar to the Al-Shifa situation where it was basically like anybody that moves in the hospital is prone to being attacked. Al-Shifa is still besieged. The World Health Organization is reporting that 335 attacks on health complexes have happened in Palestine since October 7th, with 164 in Gaza and 171 in the West Bank. Additionally, they have reported that the Al-Shifa Indonesian and Al-Ahli hospitals are seeking assistance in evacuation right now, more specifically. Heavy airstrikes have still been hitting all parts of the Strip, including in the Nusayrat refugee camp, which killed at least 20 people, the Jabalia refugee camp, which has killed 4 people today at the El Auda hospital, and IDF troops have been encircling that camp as well, though they released a statement saying that they have completed the search there. The Kamal Adwan Hospital and the Indonesian hospital, homes of medical staff, which were nurses and doctors, as well as civil defense members, Beit Lahia in northern Gaza, and Khan Yunis. In what has been confirmed as a direct targeted attack, 8 people have been killed in southern Lebanon by an airstrike, which included the killing of 3 journalists and 1 elderly woman who was of 80 years of age. This included El Maydeen staff Farah Omar and Rabih Mamari. Yesterday, well-known acclaimed Palestinian poet Mathabo Tlou was captured by the Israeli army, but today was released. Friends of Tlou on X stating, quote, "Israeli soldiers beat him and he is getting medical treatment now and with his family," end quote. Israel has now ordered the evacuation of the Jordanian field hospital as told by Jordan officials. In a review by the European Commission, it was stated that there is, quote, "no indications of European money having directly or indirectly benefited the terrorist organization Hamas," end quote, which was said by the VP Valdis Dombrovskis. Sorry for my pronunciation. The World Food Program has warned again that there is an imminent and immediate risk of starvation hitting the Gaza civilians, with still no access to food or drinkable water for the majority of those who are in the Strip. There are at least 8,000 Palestinians in Israeli custody, 2,200 of which are administrative detainees who are being held without charge or trial, 3,000 of which have been arrested in occupied West Bank since October 7th, including children. The UNRWA has now stated that 3 out of 4 people killed in Gaza are women, children, or elderly people. That means that 75% of the 14,000 people killed were women, children, or elderly. It's been reported that 50 aid trucks have been let into Gaza, though it's only for those in the south and not the north. Additionally, it has been stated that since October 7th, the amount of aid let into Gaza, quote, is only 10% of the supplies of food that used to get into Gaza, end quote, which was a WFP spokesperson. Israel has now closed down 255 businesses in Hawara, which is in the occupied West Bank, now leaving only 45 businesses operating in the area. Additionally, Bashar al-Saifi, who was one of the spokespersons of the Ministry of National Economy, has said, quote, "This is part of the economic blockade and collective punishment policy implemented by Israeli authorities," end quote. Egypt's foreign ministry has stated that the bombing of the southern part of the Gaza Strip has illustrated a clear objective of the Israeli army to evacuate people from the area completely, which I will take a moment to remind you all is textbook ethnic cleansing. Last night, it was reported that IDF tanks have reached the deep center of the Gaza city. The UNICEF has also warned of a serious threat of mass disease outbreak as fuel and water shortages and the potential collapse of all sanitation services continues. Also, the Israeli spokesperson who organized the press conference for released Hamas captive 85-year-old Yocheved Lishitz has now stepped down after she described in the press conference being treated kindly and gently by her captors. It has now been confirmed that 51-year-old Hussein Abu Jessa was killed after succumbing to his wounds, which were inflicted after being shot by live ammunition during an IDF raid into the Balata refugee camp, which is in Nablus in the West Bank. Footage from IDF soldiers has been circling around social media, showing them planting Israeli flags in the north part of Gaza Strip that now is nothing but rubble. A series of meetings are going to be held by Israeli officials today discussing whether or not they're going to accept the exchange of hostages deal. And for our last update, the leaders of BRICS, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, have called for a, quote, immediate, durable, and sustained humanitarian truce. And that is the end of the updates that I have for you all today. Reminder that this does not at all cover all of the news coming out of the Strip or Palestine in general, just that which I found most important, wrote down, and reported on myself. Please check out all of the sources that I've commented down below for more frequent updates, and in addition, you can watch my stories on here or on Instagram, which I tend to update more frequently. To get involved and take action, you can visit the link tree in my bio, which has dozens of links for you to engage with, from education to advocacy. You name it, it's on there, and please just click away. I'd also like to note that it's not just Palestinian links that I put on there. I've added some DRC, Sudan, and Tigray links. Also, if you think that there's anything that I'm missing in general for these issues or any others that I can include, please comment them down below and I'll try and include them in my link tree. Y'all's feedback is deeply appreciated and I take into consideration very heavily, so please feel free to also comment down below anything that I might not have included in this video. And in addition, just keep engaging as much as you can to help boost this content, because I and a whole lot of other creators have been dealing with very, very heavy suppression. Thank you so much for tuning in today and for engaging. Please visit my link tree in my bio to take some action now, and remember, from the river to the sea,
I think it is high time for us to fully deconstruct the violent ideologies and assumptions that the West has projected onto the phrase, from the river to the sea. There are extremely powerful people that have managed to convince millions that the phrase from the river to the sea is more of a genocidal threat than the actual Israeli government that is committing a literal genocide and has been committing a literal genocide against the Palestinian people for 7+ decades. People have gone so far as to admit to me that the phrase from the river to the sea invokes in their imagination the imagery of violent, angry Arabs pushing thousands of Israeli Jews into the ocean and watching them die. That is what's happening in their own heads when they hear from the river to the sea. And that reaction is forcing us to contend with the reality that the ideal, the dream of freedom within Western culture is so corrupted, so rotted to its core, that when an oppressed group of people call for freedom, the West hears a call for genocide. Let me repeat that so that this truly sinks in. Within a Western framework, a Western mindset, the call for freedom is equivalent to the call for genocide. And how can it not be? The quest for American freedom required the genocide, the displacement, and the oppression of millions of indigenous folk across this land. The quest for American freedom required the capturing and enslaving of millions of people who lived on land across the ocean, only to be forced to work this land so that Americans could continue maintaining their freedom and their independence. And if we're being honest with ourselves, how could that not be their definition of freedom, when who they were trying to achieve freedom from was the British Empire? You want to talk about the ultimate generational curse? The American government was formed in order for them to achieve freedom from Daddy George. And while they thought they could be better than their controlling, tyrannical father, the reality is that they are a spitting image of their father. And they have continued their violent legacy of empire and imperialism. This country has never once, in the entirety of its history, proven its ability to understand what true freedom entails. That's why whenever a liberation movement rises up, a liberation movement that is righteous to its core, the American government has lashed out so violently in opposition of that movement. Because ingrained in the American psyche, the call for liberation must mean the call for their death. I am happy and proud to say that the Palestinian people do not suffer such a tragic affliction. Despite the reality that they are forced to endure the horrific violence of a new empire rising. A new empire, mind you, that is encouraged and financially supported by Grandfather Britain and Father America. That's right. Despite the trifecta of violent imperial colonization pounding down on the Palestinian people, the Palestinian dream for freedom remains beautiful and uncorrupted. Because in the minds of Palestinians, and in the minds of people who have grown to understand Palestinians, the cry from the river to the sea is not a cry for more death, it is a cry for more life. The Palestinians are a people who want strangers to feel like friends and friends to feel like family. The Palestinians are the farmers of that land, who for generations tilled the soil, harvested the fruit, and warmly, generously welcomed crowds of pilgrims from around the world who wanted to experience the majesty of the Holy Land. The cry from the river to the sea is a bold dream of liberation that will allow Palestinians to heal the land without having to face the obstacles of checkpoints, barbed-wired fences, and concrete walls. From the river to the sea is a phrase that is meant to remind people what freedom is supposed to feel like. No borders, no identification system that is meant to separate one group of people from the other. No governmental entity that enacts laws forcing human beings to experience the oppression of second-class citizenry. So when people say the phrase from the river to the sea is the equivalent of calling for genocide, they are simply telling on themselves and revealing that they have never truly understood what freedom and equality is meant to entail.
Hola, mi nombre es Carmen, yo soy una indígena maya de México y estoy aquí con Palestina porque nuestro pueblo ha sido, también se les cometió genocidio, nuestras tierras aquí y nativos americanos también nos asesinaron y crearon un nuevo país. Israel no existe, es una imposición. Nosotros estamos aquí con Palestina. Palestina hasta que sea libre, libre, libre Palestina. ¡Libre
Okay, 4-day temporary ceasefire. Okay. Literally, what does that last night of ceasefire look like for the people of Gaza? Okay, you have first day of ceasefire, second day of ceasefire, third day of ceasefire, fourth day of ceasefire. What do you go to sleep? Like, how do you prepare for, like, resumption of bombardment? Like, great, they're getting 4 days of relief. Like, that is necessary. They've put us in a position where, like, literally we're grasping at straws. Like, okay, 4 days of ceasefire. Then what? Do they go to sleep? Do they sit through the night? Is there like a clock? Are they going to put a countdown clock that says tick, 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 boom? Like, what the fuck? That's all I can think about. What do they do after the 4 days? Like, they just go back. Like, how do you live that? How far does aid, food, temporary relief go when the very next day following that relief, they could be killed again? I don't get temporary ceasefire. I don't understand that. Like, just end it. Like, you want the hostages back? End it. End it permanently. Like, I just don't understand. Don't be thankful for this. God, like, it's less than bare minimum. It's good that it's happening in the sense that, okay, good, they get 4 days, but that's, like, it doesn't go beyond that. It is not good beyond that. It is very bad. Oh my God.
Hi. In this video, I'm gonna talk to the people who are out of really good intentions, to be clear, I know that it is good intentions, the people who keep asking how can we adopt a Palestinian child, because a lot of them are now orphans. A lot of them don't have a mother and a father, and I see a lot of people asking how to adopt from there. In this video, I'm just repeating what Palestinians are saying. These are not my words, that's their words, which makes sense. Palestinian kids are not up for adoption. Palestinian kids are gonna be raised by their neighbors, their families, their distant families, the people next door, anyone inside Palestine. Those kids are gonna be raised in their homeland. In Gaza if they are from Gaza. In the West Bank if they are from there. So they can learn who are their enemies and who are the people who love them and who did that to them, who made them an orphan when they were a baby. They are gonna grow up in Palestine and be Palestinians and keep resisting like their parents did. They are gonna keep passing the message. No Palestinian child is up for adoption. No Palestinian child is leaving their homeland. No Palestinian child is gonna be raised by someone who is not Palestinian. You can totally adopt by covering their expenses while they are in Gaza or the West Bank. You can send them money, you can cover their education. But taking the child out of their homeland, especially a Palestinian, that is not gonna happen. They need to stay there and know why they are in this position. I know that it is all good intentions, but they are not up for adoption.
Did you rape your daughter like Muhammad?
I can speak English.
That just shows how ignorant you are. Because Muhammad was a rapist. Muhammad, your prophet, you know who he is.
My prophet?
Yeah, he was a rapist. He raped Aisha. Does it say that in the Hadith or not? To my friends in immigration.
Really? Okay, go, yeah.
And to the Egyptian, the Mukhabarat wants your picture.
Okay, yalla, go.
You know the Mukhabarat?
Oh, yeah.
The Mukhabarat in Egypt will get your parents.
Go.
Does your father like his fingernails? They'll take them out one by one.
Yalla, روح منين? يلا, go.
Why should I go? Why should I go? Tell me why I should go.
The more you think you've seen everything, the more that you'll find something else to surprise you. In an act of Islamophobia, this white man in New York City harassed an Egyptian halal court vendor, threatening him of deportation. And since I'm Egyptian, I picked up on the word that he used. He also threatened him to send his picture to the Al-Mukhabarat, which is the Egyptian intelligence services, for Al-Mukhabarat to arrest his father in Egypt and pick his nails from his fingers. Continues spewing Islamophobic stuff about our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This incident took place at the 83rd and 2nd Avenue, New York City. And if you think this incident had nothing to do with what's happening now in Gaza, you're mistaken. Because reportedly, this is the same dude. Reportedly, this is Stuart Silwitz. And this is not the only surprise. Reportedly, this is the same guy and this is his resume. This man worked for the US government. Reportedly, this man used to be the Deputy Director, Senior Political Officer in the US State Department's Office of Israel and Palestine Affairs in the late 90s. This guy had a 30-year career with the United States Department of State and New York State. 3-time winner of the State Department Superior Honor Award. This page was taken down and no longer available. This is another video of him on YouTube. Just watch how sadistically he is smiling with full composure and threatening an immigrant with deportation. As an Egyptian, I was so triggered when he said the word Mukhabarat. Mukhabarat in Egypt is so serious. For Al-Mukhabarat to be involved with you, you have to be viewed as a traitor to the state. Which goes to show this guy knew exactly what he was doing to this Egyptian man.
Why should I go? Tell me why I should go. I'm standing here. I'm an American. It's a free country. It's not like Egypt. Just smile for me. Did you rape your daughter like Muhammad did? Did you rape your daughter like Muhammad?
I can speak English.
You only speak English?
No English, no.
You don't speak English?
Yes.
All right. Well, that just shows how ignorant you are. Because Muhammad was a rapist. It says in the Hadith, in your holy book.
Oh Muhammad.
What?
Oh Muhammad.
Muhammad, your prophet. You know who he is.
My prophet?
Yeah. He was a rapist. He raped Aisha. Does it say that in the Hadith or not? You know that?
I don't speak English.
What?
No English.
You don't speak English? What do you speak? What do you speak? You speak Arabic? The language of the Quran? The Holy Quran? That some people use as a toilet? What do you think of that? People who use the Quran as a toilet? Does it bother you? Does it bother you? Tell me the truth.
I don't speak English.
You don't speak English? That's too bad. That's why you're selling food in a food cart. Because you're ignorant. But you should learn English. It'll help you.
Of course,
when they deport you back to Egypt, and the Mukhabarat wants to interview you for being
because I'm...
FYI, these type of garments you're seeing a lot of Palestinian women wearing, these are not day-to-day clothes. These are not clothes you usually wear outside of the house. These are awai salah, garments made specifically for Muslim women when they pray, the 5 daily prayers. Usually when a Palestinian woman is at home and she needs to pray, she'll slip on these garments to pray really quick. Or if like a man who isn't her direct family member comes inside the house, she'll slip it on to cover herself. But it's mainly worn and kept where she prays. It's usually 2 pieces. It's like a headpiece that's attached to the sleeves and it goes down to the waist, and then there's a skirt that goes under. And they usually have these really distinct patterns, so you can tell when they're wearing them. But again, these are usually worn inside the house. It's not a public thing that you wear. The only reason why you're seeing them wearing it is because Palestinian women in Gaza right now are going to sleep wearing their awai salah in case their building gets bombed while they're sleeping, so that if they die, their bodies are fully covered. And if they survive, they're able to escape the rubble modestly and fully covered. That's why you're often seeing them wearing it in the footage showing the first few moments right after a building has been bombed, or at the hospital, because they were in their home wearing it expecting that something was going to happen, and something did. They're not just wearing like any headscarf or any like modest clothing. They're wearing the awai salah because it covers and it's really comfortable. Usually the material is made out of a really soft jersey, so it's comfortable enough to wear going to sleep. The next time you see footage of a Palestinian woman wearing the awai salah out in public, recognize what she probably just went through.
America has really indoctrinated us into believing that the only way for a group of people to obtain their liberation and freedom is through acts of nonviolence. And so they kind of prop up people like Martin Luther King and Gandhi, and that's sort of far from the truth, right? Martin Luther King was assassinated, and then there was riots all throughout the country. I mean, the country went absolutely buck, and then the U.S. government had to fold and end Jim Crow and give Black people their rights. They kind of make it seem like Martin Luther King was this powerful, nonviolent leader, and then the U.S. government was so moved that they ended up giving Black people their rights. Another example is India, which was then a subcontinent of India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. And yes, there was Gandhi's entire nonviolent, peaceful movement, but there was also physical resistance that was happening against the British Empire. And during World War II, people were growing furious and outraged with the British Empire. I mean, the British Empire was doing very nefarious, dark, disgusting things, which we never even learn about. But during World War II, there was a group of people that basically threatened the British Empire and said that we are going to fight for the opposition party if you do not give us our freedom, equality, and liberation. And the British Empire was freaking scared. Like, they were so scared and shook because they were already losing the war with Nazi Germany. And so the British Empire ended up giving in, and then Indian people ended up fighting with the British. And I think it's really important that we take this stuff and we look at history and we look at the parts that are, specifically omitted, and ask ourselves why, right? Like, what is the narrative that they are trying to teach us, and why are they trying to teach us this narrative? Another example is Haiti. This is another country where we rarely learn about them or their revolution, but
Haiti was the first black nation to gain their independence from European powers. They kicked out the French, they kicked out the British, and they don't ever make movies about the Haitian Revolution, but it was epic, you know? And one of the reasons that Haiti never flourished or thrived as a nation was because once they gained their independence, no Western country wanted to do business or trade with them because they didn't want their enslaved people to be inspired by the Haitian Revolution. On top of that, Haiti ended up having to pay back the French for years for their independence. I think it's so important that we interrogate history and we look for the parts that are purposely omitted, and we ask ourselves, why are we being taught this narrative? We are institutionalized, and I think that is the first step, is to realize that we are indoctrinated, and then we are also institutionalized to believe and think in a certain way. And that's the first part of breaking out of the matrix.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry your childhood was taken away from you. I'm sorry the leaders turned away from you. I'm sorry the world failed you. I'm sorry. Your pain is my pain. We're both children, but I wake up to an alarm clock. You wake up to the sounds of bombs. I wake up to mama saying, Mehdi, you're gonna be late to school. You wake up to your mama saying, hurry up, we need to move. I brush my teeth, you brush off the wounds. I wash my face, you wash off the blood. I go to school, you go to war. I watch the news, you are the news. I scream free Palestine, you scream for help. We're both children at the same age, but I'm privileged and you're oppressed. The thing that I could do is promise you. I promise that I will keep you in my prayers. I promise that I'll stand up for you. I promise that I will raise my voice for you.
Israel just assassinated 2 more journalists. This time they are from Lebanon. These are Farah and Omar, and they worked at the Mayadeen news channel in Lebanon, and they were killed today by Israel. This brings the number of journalists killed so far in the past 45 days to 65 journalists. Now, Israel has a record of attacking and assassinating our intelligentsia. Israel has killed so many doctors in Gaza. Israel has been killing journalists, artists, writers. They have been assassinating them. They have been arresting them in the West Bank as well. But the thing that Israel doesn't understand about the Palestinian people, after 75 years of doing this to us, is that even when you kill our intellectuals, their work lives on. Look at Naji Ali. Israel assassinated him in the UK. Every Palestinian knows who Naji Ali is. We all know what Handala is. We all know his art. Even if you killed him, his work lives on. But there is a very, very calculated effort on the part of Israelis this time to decimate any of our intellectuals and to kill as many of them as possible because they are able to get away with it. Which is why now, more than ever, it's extremely important that we keep amplifying and talking about Palestine and spreading knowledge and information about it and making sure that we're preserving our culture, we're preserving our literature, we're making our very best to understand all of these things and learning about them, because education is the only thing that we have against this terrifying settler colony.
You know that age-old rebuttal that Zionists love to use when they say, oh, but we gave them land and they didn't want it. Well, this is a crash course in Palestine's topography and the architecture of displacement. Okay, so first things first, we have the United Nations Plan of Partition, where they outlined the land that they wanted to allocate and assign to the so-called Israeli state and to the Palestinians. Now, of course, the Palestinians rejected this partition plan for a number of reasons, but there is a fundamental reason that's often missing in the narrative that I wanted to highlight today. So if you've ever questioned why the United Nations wanted to divide the land in the way it did, I want you to pay very close attention to the borders and the border lines that you see in this image here, because it's going to play a very significant role in understanding what I'm about to share next. Okay, so this is a topographic map of Palestine. It offers you an understanding of the elevation of a specific landmass, which is important when it comes to planning of infrastructure, agriculture, and water management. The other thing I want to point out is that, as you can see from this map, there are specific parts of Palestine that are outlined in red, orange, yellow, and those areas are indicative of higher terrain. So you're looking at more rockier, mountainous, hillier parts of Palestine's overall geography. So I want you to remember this image too, okay? All right, now here are my two maps side by side. Does anything stick out to you? Does anything speak to you? Are you wondering, is this a coincidence? Is this a fluke? How does this all come together? Bear with me. So you're wondering, how is this relevant? What does this mean? Feel free to pause this video and read the context that I provided in a post that I shared to Instagram, but later realized is harder to disseminate in TikTok, so I'm making this video format. So just pause the video, read the points above. Another really important thing to know that a lot of people don't know is that rainwater is actually considered the property of Israel. So any precipitation or rainwater that falls on our heads in our lands that we live on, we actually can't store or collect without a very special permit that we have to get from our occupiers, which is often denied. It's a very tedious process. Very, very, very low success rates in acquiring these types of permits. And so Palestinians are forced to actually let that rainwater that they could use for their own development, their own land, their own agriculture, or whatever purpose that you might need water for, which, like, duh, and just let it seep into the ground so that it collects into the watersheds, which we now know is in occupied Palestine, or what is so-called Israel. So again, more information, feel free to pause the video and take your time to read everything. So now we know that the partition plan outline wasn't a coincidence, but that's not the only reason that topography is relevant to why Palestinians have been subjected to a very strategic and tactical framework of displacement in favor of their occupier. When we look at lower elevation, typically lower elevations have a milder climate, which can support a wider range of crops. Access to water sources such as rivers and streams, bringing that conversation back to watersheds, is often more direct and more accessible in lower elevations, and the land is generally more accessible for cultivation and transportation of goods. With higher elevations, there's shorter growing seasons due to the cooler temperatures, which limits the types of crops that can be grown. You're also talking about like a very challenging terrain to work with because it's rockier, it's harder to build infrastructure on, it's less accessible for transportation or otherwise. And unless you have a lot of funds for the proper type of development to create terracing and try to make the land suitable for agriculture, you're not really being set up for success. So maybe you need a second to process all of this, but I just want to iterate that this Zionist entity, this colonial enterprise, from its very inception, was never designed to give Palestinians true statehood. The very frameworks of the Palestinians' displacement is literally designed to ensure that we could never sustain ourselves, that we never could have a fighting chance to really feed off our own land, to survive off our own land, and to develop ourselves economically and otherwise in order to prosper as a people. The intention to erase us, to displace us, to ethnically cleanse us, to genocide us has been there since the very blueprints of our occupation. And that's why when they say, but we gave them land, we say we want a Palestine that is free from the river to the sea.
A 4-day ceasefire has been decided upon, but remember those very short 4 days will come to an end. And during those very short 4 days, the oppressor, the empire, is still the empire. That part hasn't changed. Just because there's a 4-day pause doesn't mean that the oppressor is any less of an oppressor. And we absolutely need to demand a longer ceasefire. But as a Korean, I'm going to tell you why we don't want a permanent ceasefire. 70 years ago, Korea entered into what is now a permanent ceasefire. We've been in ceasefire in Korea for 70 years. And that means we are technically still at war. And using that as an excuse, the US empire has heavily invested in militarization around the Korean peninsula. And I talk about this all the time. One of the reasons why Korea remains divided and became divided originally is because of the US empire. They're the only ones out of all of the people who originally agreed on the ceasefire that does not want to actually move on to the next step, which was supposed to be a peace treaty. But the US empire doesn't want a peace treaty because that means demilitarization and the US is out, which also means the US loses its stronghold in the region. So as a Korean who has lived in permanent ceasefire, what I wish for Palestine is not only a longer ceasefire where people can actually recover and find each other and start healing, but what must follow is an end to the occupation, an end to apartheid, an end to the empire, and land back to Palestinians. And we don't stop sharing, fighting, screaming, and protesting until all empires fall.
So Biden's getting sued for his involvement in the conflict in Gaza because, like, duh, it's an ethnic cleansing.
United States President Joe Biden, Secretary of State Antony Blinken, and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin are accused of failing to prevent and aiding and abetting genocide. The lawsuit in federal court was filed by a nonprofit legal organization.
You realize how many times the Israeli government has been caught lying in one day about how terrorists are living in hospitals? Like, for sake, they've deleted 12 tweets just today alone. Like, they put bullshit out like this, like, oh yeah, we're moving incubators for babies because we're trying to save civilians. You cut the electricity last week, the babies are already dead. Like, they think you're dumb. They think you're dumb. This is the level of evidence that the Israeli government is trying to peddle to you to convince you that they're targeting Hamas. They went to Best Buy to get a laptop after they bombed the place. Like, look, see, look, we found Hamas operatives' electronic. Meanwhile, the wallpaper on the computer that they forgot to blur out is of an Israeli officer. I really need you to understand how stupid they think all of you are. They're literally doing photo ops of themselves moving boxes that say medical supplies. In English! Like, real talk, could you make the font on those empty boxes any bigger? In the language that nobody writes and speaks in.
The Convention on the Prevention of Genocide was unanimously adopted by the UN General Assembly in 1948, but was not formally ratified by U.S. Congress until 1988 in legislation that was sponsored by then-Senator Joe Biden.
The Thanksgiving Day parade was somehow blocked by pro-Palestinian activists.
New York, where you at? You heard her? You saw that video, right? You watched that whole video, right? Where we at, New York? Cause right now, Cali thugged it out. Blocked the whole bridge. Tossed the keys. Kobe. They did that. Cali did that. You gonna let them have it? You gonna let them know West is the best? Or are we gonna show them East is a beast? We could block shit too. We could block nationally televised shit. New York, what's good? What's good, son? What's good? What you got, New York? Are we gonna show them what's up or what's up? Y'all know I'm in Puerto Rico, but I know my New Yorkers know what's up. I know my New Yorkers know how to show up and show out for a parade. Am I right, New Yorkers? Do we know how to show up at a parade with flags? Let's go, New York. I'm counting on y'all.
Who gonna tell the Christians that Jesus Christ of Nazareth was likely one of those Middle Eastern men that they're dropping bombs on right now? See, by changing him from who he was and where he was born and putting all of that in historical context, giving him blonde hair and blue eyes or brown hair and blue eyes, makes it a lot easier to drop bombs on people over there, but likely he was one of them. And come to think of it, he was also killed by an apartheid state. Wait a minute now. I hope that ruins Christmas for you.
Make no mistake, the reason that an impending multi-day ceasefire is being offered right now is not because our government or the Israeli government has suddenly recognized the dire need for humanitarian intervention on behalf of the displaced and traumatized people of Gaza. That is happening right now because what they want more than anything is for us to shut up and go spend our money for Black Friday, which we absolutely will not be doing.
Don't forget that it's not just about free Palestine, but the Palestine that's freeing us along the way.